The King and Queen of Canada now on their way back to the UK. They opened a new session of Parliament with Charles III reading the speech from the throne in the Senate, a significant, if not symbolic, event. Tonight we're joined by Barry MacKenzie, royal historian at St. Francis Xavier University, and Annie Guinness. She's also with the Monarchist League of Canada. It's nice to see you, Barry.
Pleasure, Todd.
I mentioned that they're flying home. They must be extremely pleased, the Royals. They had beautiful weather and they had a very large and supportive group to boot.
Yeah, I don't think we really could say that things could have gone any better. From the reception they received yesterday to the reception they received in the Senate, it was really a spectacular couple of days. The sunshine, overall, a really great start, I think, to this renewed relationship with Canada after the coronation, and also at a time when we really needed it, a real shot in the arm for Canadian unity and a bit of national pride. It was a real win-win today.
It was interesting. There was a line for the sovereign to walk, to be sure, to be relevant, supportive of the senior member of the Commonwealth in Canada, but don't be seen as being overtly political. How do you think he did?
I think he did very well. I mean, it's a tricky thing to do, and more than any other person in the world, the King knows this. That he, particularly because of the position he's in, this isn't the only gig he has. So he's taking the advice of prime ministers all across the globe throughout these various realms of the Commonwealth. So it's a tricky position to be in. I think the speech struck exactly the tone that we needed. There were some subtle references in there. In true Canadian fashion, it was modest but firm in affirmations of our sovereignty and of national pride and unity in a way that I think Canadians really appreciated and needed to hear that in this particular climate.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a couple of those things specifically in a moment. But so the government writes the throne speech. Is there room for the King to add his, his own take to it?
I think the King can add the flourishes that are necessary in the same way that the King might add those in his Christmas, in his Christmas remarks, those opportunities to sort of speak in a way, in using that soft power, that we've been hearing so much in the media in the last number of days and weeks leading up to this, that, he's not going to change the substantive meaning of what the speech is all about and the sort of direction that the government's going to take. But in the conversations between his press office and the Prime Minister's office, I think that's where we see those opportunities to have some input and to add a certain flourish here and there that may really add, his own personal feeling, his own lending that kind of support that we need right now and that I think he's anxious to give.
You alluded to this a moment ago. There were some muscular or very direct comments surely intended to be received by the White House. Things like, the true North is indeed, interesting that word, indeed strong and free. That was met with applause. And then other references that Canada will build new alliances. It was all very carefully constructed, but there was some pointed comments in there.
Yeah, there's no question that this whole affair, these 2 days, in large part have been about what's going on right now in terms of Canadian-American relations. It's about reminding the world, and particularly reminding the White House, that Canada is a sovereign nation, that we have opportunities, that we have trading partners, we have relationships around the world, that we're not, in a position that we want to be bullied. And I think the King's presence here really affirmed that in a significant way. And in all those subtle references in the speech today, we saw the government reiterating that. And I think the King was keen to do it. If you look at the messaging, the way in which he approaches communications, how that's changed in Buckingham Palace in the last 3 years, you see the flourishes of the King's own language, the way that he writes and the way that he speaks, and just the inclusion of that word "indeed." That to me, sounds an awful lot like a personal intervention by the King in the writing of that throne speech. Okay. And it, as you say, it means an awful lot, that one little word.
And we know that U.S. President Donald Trump is smitten with Buckingham Palace and with the monarchy, so no doubt that will resonate with him. Look, this was important to the Carney government to have him here to open this session of Parliament. Was it also important to the royal family to strengthen ties? I mean, we know recently other nations in the Commonwealth have either withdrawn or have debated doing that type of thing. I mentioned that we're the senior member of the Commonwealth. To have that strong showing today, that's important to the firm, as it were.
Absolutely. The Queen used to say that I must be seen in order to be believed. So it's almost been 3 years now since the Queen's death and the King coming to the throne. So obviously there would have, we assume there would have been a royal visit a little bit sooner had it not been for the King's illness. But it is important. I mean, the institution, if it is to thrive, even though behind the scenes it's working every day through the Governor General's office and the offices of the Lieutenant Governors, we need that presence. We need the King to be engaged. And in the last number of months, in light of what's been happening internationally, he's been there in subtle ways, and in today in a not so subtle way in performing that. So I think for the future health of the institution, it was a very important move. And I think based on polls, I don't put a lot of stock in them, but in the polling information that's been coming out, in the crowds, in the diversity of those crowds, in terms of newcomers, Canadians, young people, older people, a great diversity in all sorts of different ways. It's very encouraging, and I think that's exactly what the monarchy needs in order to survive. It has to be relevant to the Canadians of today and the Canadians of tomorrow. I
saw a couple emails from different Republican groups, but the smaller Republican groups, but didn't seem to make much of noise on Parliament Hill. Barry MacKenzie, thank you for joining us from St. FX. We certainly appreciate your insight and the clarity on what happened today. It was certainly a big day.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Todd. Thanks very much.
We'll take a time out. We'll be back with plenty more of your local news after this.